So Josh Trank is back to redeem himself after 2015's Fantastic Four. So will he be able to do it? Let's find out. Capone is directed by Josh Trank and stars Tom Hardy as the notorious real-life gangster. After spending 10 years in prison, his body and mind is absolutely wrecked by neurosyphilis, and the state deems that he is no longer a threat to society, so they release him for the final year of his life. And that's what this movie is. It's not about Al Capone the gangster from before he went to prison. This is about him after all that, when he's just a shell of a man in the final days of his life. I was really looking forward to this movie because it has a whole lot going for it. Its subject matter is interesting. It's about an interesting person. Regardless of what you think about Al Capone in real life as a person, you cannot deny the fact that he did lead an interesting life. And these interesting lives are the kind that make the best biopics. So I was interested in seeing this side of Al Capone that we'd never seen before. And with Tom Hardy playing Capone, I figured this was going to be a home run in the performance department because Hardy typically does a really damn good job in any performance he takes on. You could tell that the guy really takes his craft seriously and deep dives into any character that he portrays. You also have a great cast beyond Hardy featuring Linda Cardellini, Noel Fisher, Kyle MacLachlan, Matt Dillon, and many others. Really, the only wild card amongst this whole entire scenario was Josh Trank, the director. I really enjoyed Trank's first directorial effort, Chronicle. It was a great film, and upon seeing it, I thought this guy's got a bright future ahead of him. And then he made 2015's Fantastic Four. But I'll give him a pass on Fantastic Four, because while no, it was not a good movie, I didn't hate it as much as a lot of people did. I didn't love it either, but I didn't have a pure hate for it like a lot of people online do. And I am willing to give a little when it comes to that movie due to the possible studio interference that happened with that film. So while yeah, he had a great one and then he had a misstep, I was overall on Trank's side coming into this movie. Now, like I said a minute ago, the idea for this movie, Al Capone's Last Days, could lend itself to an extremely interesting and intriguing story. And all those actors that are involved, just about everybody is in top form and give very commendable performances. Just about. There is, however, one key performance that didn't really work here. And if you hadn't guessed yet, that would be, surprisingly enough, Tom Hardy's Al Capone. Hardy's portrayal of Capone doesn't just not work, it's pretty fucking bad. Oh my god, what happened here? Now look, I get that Al Capone during the events of this movie was absolutely wrecked by neurosyphilis and dementia. So yeah, he's gonna kind of be all over the place and not a lot of what he says and does is gonna make sense. On top of all that, the guy had had syphilis since he was like 15 and he had had multiple strokes. So I know he's gonna be pretty fucked up and that's fine and all, but what the fuck is this that Hardy's doing? Let's start with the voice. For the entirety of the movie that Hardy speaks, he speaks in this really odd, cartoonish kind of pseudo-gangster talk. It's not quite that whole, yeah, see, coppers, you're never gonna take me alive, yeah, kind of voice that you get in like the old gangster movies, but it's kind of like a twisted, cartoony version of that. A lot of the time, you can't even really understand what he's saying, and I get that the character has had a stroke and all these other fucked up things happen to him, but this is a movie, and he is communicating things, and we, the viewers, just kind of need to know what the fuck he's saying sometimes. But every line of dialogue he does in the movie is done like,
You're not gonna get me.
and that's not really doing it justice. It comes off as almost comical as how out there and weird that it is. Now, I've never heard Al Capone speak as far as like any recordings or anything, so I don't know if he actually did speak that way. And you hear about these character actors that are playing real life people and they find out how they spoke and these weird mannerisms they have, so they incorporate that into their performance and it comes out great. Case in point, Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln. Everybody heard that little high-pitched voice that he kind of did like this in the promos leading up to Lincoln's release, and we were all kind of like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But apparently that's how Lincoln talked, and the movie came out, and it just worked. Well, I don't give a fuck how Capone talked. It doesn't work here. When making a movie, there is a thing such as creative license, and it is okay to change things if it is for the betterment of your film. Now, beyond the fact that you just can't understand half the shit that comes out of Hardy's mouth in this movie, his actions throughout and the way that he is actually acting physically is just really fucking out there too. As with the voice and the things he's saying, it borderlines on comedy, but it's not funny. He'll just randomly have these really exaggerated movements and big eyes and stuff like that all the time, and it just doesn't work. work. It doesn't matter if that's how it was in real life. It doesn't matter if that's what really goes on. In this movie, it does not work. So you need to tone that down because it just comes off as ridiculous. This is by far one of, if honestly not the worst performances Hardy has ever turned in. And I kind of hate saying that because it seems like the guy was trying to deep dive into this character and give us one of those legit award-winning performances, but it just nosedived at every turn. And I don't know if this performance is due to the director saying, hey, you need to do this, pushing for these exaggerated things and the way that he's performing, or if it was Hardy just going full-on method and taking it too far. Either way, the blame falls on Josh Trank, the director, because if he's pushing for that, then I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. And if it was Hardy that was just going too far, it is the director's job to reel him in. You're the fucking director. You're supposed to say, hey man, you know, I like what you're doing there, but let's bring it down a couple of notches and let's keep this and let that go and we'll see what we got there in the end. But no, he was either pushing for the shit or just said, hey, fuck it, this guy's acting like a complete fucking lunatic and I don't know what the fuck's going on here, but whatever. So either way, I really don't know what the fuck Trank was thinking. A bad director can, in fact, get a shit performance out of a great actor. Look at a lot of Uwe Boll's movies if you don't believe me. How do you make Ben Kingsley look bad? So the movie's pretty much wrecked at this point because its main character, the one you follow for the vast majority of this movie, is done so bad that it's hard to take anything he does seriously. Maybe it can redeem itself a bit in the story department. That's cute, but no. The story of Capone is just, I mean, there's just not really one. There's a couple of things that slightly resemble plots that come up here or there, but they never really go anywhere. And there's nothing that I would really call the central plot to this movie besides watching Al Capone die slowly. The only real plot point that comes up repeatedly would be that of some money, but even that never really feels like it's the main story. Really, as best I could tell, the main story here is just to watch a person wither away and die painfully and slowly. I mean, if that's your thing, okay, there is actually a word for that, Schadenfreude. It's a German word. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. And if that's you, then, you know, hey, kudos to you. This is your flick. But for the rest of us, that just translates to boring. And that is this movie's biggest offense, that it's just pretty dull and boring for the vast majority of its runtime. There's also some really odd choices that this movie makes. For instance, incontinence, which I know is a problem with people that are suffering from these types of diseases, but the way that it is portrayed in this movie is in a serious way, but it's almost like they're playing it for laughs again, and it just is not funny at all. If there's any humor to be found in it, it's because it is so fucking bad. I mean, there's like this part where Capone's sitting down and having a meeting with some people, and then all of a sudden, while they're asking him questions, he just starts having like these O faces going on, and then they start covering their faces and saying, oh my god, what does that smell? And it's because he's shitting himself. And then you just start to hear it, and it's like fart sounds. And you just can't take that serious. Once again, I know that this is a real thing that happens to people, but so is taking a bath. But we don't see all of our characters take a bath throughout this movie. It may be something that happens in real life, but we don't have to see it. I mean, if you're unable to shoot this and show it in a serious way that's not pretty much comical, then just don't show it and reference it. You don't leave it in when it's clearly just this bad. There's also some characters that show up in the movie that aren't really there. It's due to his dementia and the neurosyphilis he's got going on and all the fucked up shit in his head that he's seeing people, I guess, from his past. And that's fine in this kind of movie. I mean, I think that's a cool idea of not knowing who all is really there and not. But once again, the movie just does it all wrong. Like, you have this character that just doesn't exist. However, from what we see, the character interacts with at least one other person in the movie. This isn't one of those situations where they're not really talking or something like that. They are directly talking. That one, I guess, could be explained away in some kind of real fucked up way. But there are two other parts. One of these being a situation where this imaginary character is driving a fucking car in which Capone is in the passenger seat. And you can't say that, hey, Capone was driving, because he is in absolutely no state to drive a car in any way, shape, form, or fashion. There's also another part that could be spoiler territory, I guess, to where he's in a place with this character in another place that he just could not have gotten to alone. And when you find out that this character's not really there, you're like, how the fuck did you get there? Better yet, how the fuck did you get back? It's inconsistencies like this that do run throughout this movie. I really thought that this was at least gonna be an okay movie, but it's just not. And not only is it not okay, it's pretty fucking bad. This was a huge disappointment. The only redeeming quality it has is that all the other actors in the movie do a commendable job. But all that is vastly overshadowed by Hardy's insanely crazy performance, all the crazy, nonsensical, weird decisions that they made with the story, and most of all, the fact that it's just overall boring. There's just not much, if anything at all, that I could find that made this movie worth watching. And because of that, Capone is unfortunately a total dumpster fire. Honestly really surprised at how bad this movie was. And I wouldn't be surprised that if there are people out there that will find this to be one of those so bad it's good kind of movies. But at this point for me, it's just so bad that it's fucking bad. So there it is, guys, my review of Capone. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Chicago.
You know what the difference is between Adolf Hitler and Al Capone? Hitler's dead. Capone lives like a king in Florida.
You know, I was on your side, Trank. I gave you a lot of leeway. You got me with Fantastic Four and I let you off the hook. But now you got me a second time. And believe me, my friend, there will not be a third.